This is JadeCast, your gateway to traditional martial arts and Chinese culture. Brought to you by your host, Shifu Jonathan Bluestein. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the podcast. On JadeCast, we're going to have a dual format. At times, I'm going to have these amazing, fascinating interviews with various martial arts teachers, and other times, I'm going to include lectures such as this one for your pleasure and benefit. So, today, I want to introduce to you two of the biggest lies in martial arts, and specifically in traditional martial arts. What are those huge lies that are being told to people every single time all over the world? Well, the first lie would be that there are no secrets in the martial arts. Oh boy, we're gonna get to that. The second lie is that you can just train diligently and high-level skills are going to pop out of nowhere and manifest in your body. Well, these two possibly biggest lies in the martial arts, and most commonly in the traditional martial arts, are actually related. So let's break it down. Let's look at the first one. There are no secrets in the martial arts. Is it true? Of course it's not. Every single trade and profession has its secrets. What, don't you know? Carpenters have their secrets, lawyers have their secrets, even plumbers have their secrets. Everybody's got secrets. I mean, that's the way you advance in a capitalist society and economy. If you would like to get ahead of the competition, then by all means, you gotta have an edge, right? It's competitive. Now, I'm not saying that martial arts are a capitalist economy, not necessarily, but I'm just saying when people wish to compete with others, and especially when money is involved, then you better have the goods. Now, historically in the martial arts, it wasn't necessarily about money, it was often about survival. If my village has the goods on how to fight, then we are going to have the edge over the next village that wishes to invade. It's very simple. So basically everybody has got their secrets. And there are two people who in the martial arts who typically say that there are no secrets. Now, who are these people? Either people that don't have the secrets themselves, so they say, well, there are no secrets. That makes sense. The other type of person that commonly says there are no secrets is a person who holds secrets. It's like the liar that says, I'm not a liar. See? Now, secrets in the martial arts are not necessarily what you think. Because a lot of people, especially novice practitioners, tend to believe that a secret would be, oh, I'll just do this and the person's gonna drop dead. Or I will know this type of movement and suddenly within a few months' time, I'm gonna get these superhuman skills. And actually, it's very far away from what those secrets really are. So let's get into it. In the martial arts, as far as I can tell based on my many years of experience, secrets are usually, typically, training methods. Alright? So here's how it goes. You've got methods to train the body and train the mind that have been gradually developed and cultivated, at times just discovered by people over several generations. Some of these methods are really ancient, thousands of years old, and have been incorporated into the martial arts later in recent centuries or recent decades, and some are new. But these training methods are geared towards helping a practitioner reach a higher level of skill. Knowing how to practice these things will help you get there, but they don't necessarily guarantee you to get there, because you know what? The interesting thing is about these secret training methods, that they do still take effort. So it doesn't matter if you know them, you also have to understand them, and you also have to practice them. So it's funny because oftentimes I see a lot of martial arts masters actually reveal most, if not all, of their secrets. They openly talk about their training methods. They are quite open in explaining them, even, but people don't practice. And they don't realize, oh, actually, if you want that skill, you have to practice it for 5, 10, sometimes 20 years to really master it. And your body would change accordingly, and it's going to take time. Now, why is it taking so long? Well, unlike learning a technique, my good friend, Grandmaster Keith R. Kernspecht from Germany, I have a book of his right in front of my eyes. It's a rare book nowadays. It's called On Single Combat. It was so popular that it had 17 editions in German and 5 editions in English, but you can't get it on the bookshelves or online nowadays. And in this fantastic book on single combat, Grandmaster Kenspecht had written that it actually takes as little as 10 hours to really ingrain a technique well in one's body and get really good at it and be able to use it effectively against quite a lot of people. Of course, it depends. But we're talking about net 10 hours, meaning that every single minute of those 10 hours accumulated was focused on cultivating that technique. And 10 hours is not a lot, yeah? But the point Grandmaster Kenspecht makes in the book is because very seldom a technique is allotted 10 hours in casual group practice, you don't even get those 10 hours in a week. Now imagine you go into group practice at a certain martial arts school and the teacher shows a technique and now you're partnering up. You're going to practice the technique of a partner. So at one point you practice it, at another point he practices it. In between you guys rest, you talk, you convey messages to one another, you pause, etc., etc. So how many seconds, how many minutes have you invested in actually physically practicing the technique? Wouldn't be much, right? I mean, at best you got 5 minutes, 5 net minutes, maybe 10 on a very long class if you're lucky, and you need 10 hours, and you jump to the next technique and you do a lot of other things. So would you get the 10 hours on this specific one technique even in a year? Maybe. If your martial art has a lot of techniques, then maybe not even in a year. So, but anyhow, I digress. I wish to go back to the subject at hand. So basically, if we're talking about techniques, 10 hours would be sufficient for decent skill, and in 50 hours or even 20 hours, you'd get a very good level of skill with a given technique, if indeed every single second of those 20 hours was invested in cultivating that technique. That is opposed to a training method that has to change your body, because guess what? Our bodies change very slowly. In an adult, the muscles change the quickest. So as you know, you can go to the gym, start lifting weights, or you know someone who does, and within a month you're already going to notice changes in their bodies. In 3 months, there's gonna be a very significant change. In 3 months of weight training, the muscles are gonna reshape themselves, and it's gonna be noticeable that the body changed. And this is not the same with tendons and connective tissues. And generally speaking, it takes tendons, connective tissues as long as 3 years to manifest such a great change. And the reason being that our body is made out of cells, and different types of cells replace themselves at different pace. So muscle cells in 3 months, arguably most or all of the muscle cells in the body would have been replaced. So a muscle cell would die, would be replaced by another muscle cell after 3 months, or maybe a little bit less, a little bit more, depends on the individual. All of the muscular cells in our body are already not the cells that they had been several months ago. That is quite unlike with tendons. With tendons, this process of replacing every single cell in your tendons and other connective tissues could take as long as 3 years. Now, that's a long period of time. And with bones, you know how long it is with bones? Some say the upwards of 7 years. So, if we're talking about the training method that needs to change your body, unlike a technique, what does that mean? It means that it would take the tendons as long as 3 years to really change themselves dramatically. That's a long period of time. It's a long-term investment. And for the bones, 7 years. So for the body to really, really replace itself with something new, we're talking about a 7-year investment if you're talking about training method that really needs to change you deeply from the inside. And this is why people don't get those types of skills often enough, because they don't persevere for 3 years, for 7 years, for how long it takes to really change into that creature they would have liked to become. And those who persevere for decades, these turn out to be the martial arts masters. Now, I said most of the secrets are training methods. I'll get back to that in a moment. But what are the other secrets? Well, maybe anywhere between 5 to 10% of secrets are what people do have in mind. Sort of things like, oh, you know, I press this point and I strike that point and that thing happens. Yeah, sure. But again, there's a caveat, because if you do not know the theory about how to use these things and you haven't practiced them for many, many years, that's just not going to happen. All right. I'm going to talk another time about this whole concept of dianmai, point dotting. Actually, in Chinese, what dianmai or dimmak, what does it mean? In Chinese, it means to dot the channel, the meridian, not to strike a point, to dot the channel, and we'd get to what that means on another lecture. So anyhow, back to the training methods, because they comprise most of those so-called secrets. When we're talking about training methods, it would be things like, how do I move my hip musculature in a very original and unintuitive way that would allow me to throw people better, or avoid being thrown, or be able to generate more power with my body. And I know I'm not specific here, but in later lectures I would definitely be very specific, and I'm going to cover a lot of these so-called secrets, whether they be training methods or other things. So bear with me, but I'm just generalizing right now to give you a sense of what this means. Or otherwise, training methods would be, how do I, while practicing various movements, almost any movement in my system or style, how do I move the energy in my channels? How do I open my meridians? This is something that people think would just happen one day, but actually there's just ways to do it, okay? How do I make my shoulder joint elongate over time, so I could, first of all, have greater reach, right? Because if I can pull my arm more to the front, if I can get a few extra centimeters, and then my reach is longer, and my opponent cannot anticipate how long my reach would be. Potentially, it can, if done correctly, strengthen the shoulder joint, strengthen the connective tissues there. It can help me generate more power, etc., etc. These are all training methods. How do I get this done? How do I change my body from the inside? And this is actually the type of thing that provides people with skills. And the secrets are many, they're numerous, and they allow us to change our bodies to become all sorts of things in all sorts of different ways. Now, it would be true to comment that most of the skills in martial arts nowadays, which are considered so-called secrets, are out in the open, either in books, videos or articles or other means that are accessible to the general public. But here's the problem. First of all of these secrets, most of these tend to be system specific. So that there is a very exceptional training method or a way to apply certain techniques to opponents. But if you come from a very different martial art than mine, maybe that's not even relevant to what you do, and it wouldn't fit in well with your kinds of movements, you know? For instance, I'm just giving you a broad example so you get what I mean. If I practice my traditional Chinese martial arts that I do personally, and you put a nunchaku in my hands, nunchaku and Okinawan, also originally Chinese type of weapon. Well, I like that type of weapon, but it does not at all fit the body mechanics and the methods that are used in my specific martial arts. That's just how it is. Or if you take a a Chinese curved sword, a Chinese broadsword, and you put that Dao in the hand of someone who is practicing Okinawan karate or taekwondo or even boxing, well, you know, that sword does not match well the types of body mechanics of those martial arts. It just doesn't fit. So it's not only a matter of having the training method or that secret skill or knowledge or ability, it also has to suit well what you're doing. And to make that work, you need a teacher to explain that to you, right? So that's one thing. Another thing is, so what? So what if that this is accessible? If you are diligent enough, you can find the book or the video or the article in which those things are explained. Still, you don't only have to practice it, you have to make up your mind whether it is useful or not, which paradoxically you need to practice it for several months at least to get a sense of if it's useful or not, if you don't have a teacher to tell you, right? So the problem is we have too much knowledge and information nowadays. There's so many books, articles, and videos out there. How do you know which one is useful? Which skill method is a real secret, and which teacher who wrote about them is just bullshitting you? You know, sometimes even if as a veteran practitioner myself, I have written several books about the martial arts. I have written numerous articles. I've made a lot of videos. I have a podcast, everything. But you know what? I don't always know when I read in a book or an article, or even, when I see on video, it's easier. But when I read about it in books or articles, sometimes it's difficult to tell. Like, is this teacher bullshitting me? Or is he legit? Is this a skill that's worth my time, to start spending like months and years on that? Or is this just a waste of time and he's just conning the readers? Well, at times it's difficult to say. Very difficult to say. So the fact that things are out there, not everything, but most things actually, well, it doesn't mean that you would know what to choose and how to use it and whether the context is right for your martial art, etc., etc. So that's biggest lie 1 out of 2, that there are no secrets in the martial arts. And you know what? It's very, very common in Oriental culture, not just the martial arts, that a teacher would tell people, oh, I have no secrets. And they have lots of secrets. It's just common. That's what people do. And it's not that they're bad people, it's just part of the culture. It's the way they speak. Oftentimes in China, in Japan, it's the person says, I have no secrets. And the other person thinks, in their mind, yeah, sure, buddy, you have no secrets. But everybody knows that they have secrets, and it's okay. In the West, we think like, oh, he's lying. What a lying bastard. He's such an immoral character. No, it's just the culture is like that. It's a different way of interacting with people, right? We have to be tolerant of other cultures and understand that they have a different conception about interpersonal interaction, okay? It's not the same as the manner in which you would interact with people, say, in the United States or Canada or Germany. Alright, so that's biggest lie 1. There are no secrets. Biggest lie 2, very much related, is you are just going to practice very hard and you're gonna get high level skills like this or that teacher, or like I do, like I have. Well, it's a huge, huge lie. It's just not gonna happen like that. And I see it quite a bit. I'll give you examples. So you study with a certain teacher and you see that he has a very good, what people like to call inch punch. Teacher can release a tremendous amount of power from a very short distance without recalling the arm or leg back. And you ask them, sensei or shifu or coach, how can I do that? And they say, you just practice 20 years. That's one huge lie. That's a lie. That's not how it happens. Well, at times it does, but let me explain. Okay, so there are the odd practitioners here and there who are just gifted and they're hardworking, and in the span of 5, 10, 20, 30, 50 years, they find all sorts of ways to do interesting things with their bodies just for very diligent practice. It happens. It actually happens often. But here's the problem. It doesn't happen often enough. It might happen to 1 in 100 or 1 in 1,000 or more. So that's not fair to tell someone else, you just practice and you'd get it, because if you don't have the secrets and decent instruction, you're not going to get it. Because diligent practice is only one component in this whole scheme of things of how to get good at something. And what I'm saying here is also true for any other type of Gong Fu. Gong Fu, skill acquired through continuous practice. This is what it means. A high level of skill acquired through continuous practice. So, a good chef has great Gong Fu. A wonderful musician has great Gong Fu. Much like a terrific martial artist has great Gong Fu. And you're not going to get that great Gong Fu just by working hard. There are many more components to it. So, first of all, you need to know those secrets we talked about earlier, especially training methods. Because those training methods typically took people several generations to develop and then hone. And if you don't have those training methods, which are very specific, you're not going to get the same type, at least, of skill that the other practitioners and teachers have. And at worst, you're not going to get anywhere near their level of skill. So you need those secrets and you need diligent practice. What else do you need? You need a very good teacher in anything. Now, again, I'm a decent autodidact. Okay, I can self-learn pretty well a lot of things, but a lot of things I don't, especially physical things. I need a good teacher, and most people do. All right, and even if you can teach yourself well, you could have been so much better if you had a better teacher. Okay, if you had a teacher at all, some people don't have teachers, and that's a big problem. That's partly why we have traditions, all right, because from one generation to the next, we learn quite a lot about instruction, about practice, and we pass on those methods, those lessons, this knowledge. And then we all grow. With each generation, we are supposed to become better. So we said you need the secrets, you need good instruction, you need diligent practice, and you also need to learn outside of the scope of the physical practice. So you need some scholarship, usually, to some extent. Now, this is said with a caveat here, because what happens is, especially with Oriental martial arts, a lot of what helps you become better at them is knowledge of the culture in which they developed. It really does help you physically become better. And the thing is, pardon me, I'm gonna close the noisy things here. The thing is that people who grew up in Oriental cultures themselves, if you're a Japanese person who grew up in Japan, you lived there all your life. If you're a Chinese person who grew up in China and was surrounded by traditional Chinese culture, not necessarily the case always because China has changed a lot. If you're Korean, etc., then you have been imbued in that sort of cultural atmosphere from the moment you were born. You have a lot of that so-called scholarly knowledge already ingrained in you by the virtue of having lived in the culture. So you do not require as much cultural learning and scholarly effort as would someone who grew up outside of that culture. Now you'd still have to invest in learning, but not as much as someone who's a foreigner to that particular culture around which this art was built and cultivated. So you need good instruction, you need diligent effort, you need the secret skills and methods, or at least some of them, the minimum that would allow you to get to a minimal decent level. And you need some work on scholarship. You need to learn the philosophies, the culture, the histories, and whatever can give you a good context about how to become better. Now let's flip it around and let's look at it from the point of view of, say, a Chinese person who grew up in a village in China and they want to study Western boxing, all right? Imagine that person would not have a speed bag, or they would not have a heavy bag. That's the type of training equipment that help boxers a lot, right? Without that training equipment, you can't employ certain training methods, and you're not going to get the same results. Or imagine otherwise that there would be someone from a remote area of the world, someone who has lived on an island all their lives and they don't have a television, they don't have access to internet, and they want to study Western boxing, but they have never seen professional boxing matches. They've only seen a few of them. They haven't seen hundreds and thousands of them like other people who practice boxing in the United States. Well, that's gonna be a hindrance to their skill and understanding of the art, wouldn't it? So it's the same with everything else. Whichever art we choose to practice, we need a context. And going back on the second biggest lie, so I see a lot of teachers, for instance, they teach Zhanzhuang. Zhanzhuang is a type of practice and a skill that I've taught for many years and practiced for longer. And it consists of standing in a fixed or almost fixed posture and then cultivating internal movement on the inside, moving a lot of small things inside your body to train your structure, the way you hold your body, the way your body is able to deliver power to an opponent and absorb power inwards and other aspects. This is called structure. And you hold that posture for a long period of time, anywhere between 5 minutes and 2 hours, depends on the posture and the individual. Typically, depending on the posture that I teach, it would be anywhere between 5 minutes and 40 minutes, and depending on the practitioner and what they want to achieve. But anyway, a lot of people teach this as just a muscle strengthening exercise. Okay, you just stand there, you do nothing, and the chi is going to come and you're gonna get those mystical skills. Well, that's nonsense. That's absolute bollocks. Really. It's not the purpose or intention of this sort of training method, this sort of exercise, to just stand there and do nothing or breathe deeply. Really? Really? Is that all there is to it? No, of course not. There are at least 40, in my teachings, there are at least 40 different smaller training methods contained within that training method. How do you breathe into your lower abdomen to the area called dantian, for which I'll make a specific lecture later. How do you move that area? How do you move that dantian? how do you move your hip bone? How do you draw small circles with your joints? How do you separate your body horizontally and vertically into two halves and move those two halves simultaneously? How do you separate the movement between lower dantian and tanzhong, the middle dantian, and draw different circles with each of these? How do you spiral your body? How do you use your intention to trigger your muscles to do all sorts of interesting things while you stand there? There's so much going on, but a lot of people that either don't want to share the secrets or they don't have the secrets, they tell students, okay, you just stand there. And they let them just stand there and do nothing and not teach them any additional methods within that, or very few of them, for years. For years, I've met people who have been standing for 10, 20 years, just standing there, breathing, doing nothing else. And it makes me sad, really. These people are just, I mean, they do get some benefit if you just stand there and you're very calm, you're relaxed, you in a semi-meditative state. All right, I mean, this has benefit to some extent, but this is not nearly the full intent behind this sort of practice, not at all. So this is what I mean, you know. People tell you, okay, you'd get this sort of punch, this sort of ability after this and that number of years, or you just stand there and the energy would come. That's not how it works. There are methods to make those things happen, or at times they aren't, all right? But the teachers should be honest. Either they know or they don't know. And you know what? All right, I get it. Especially in traditional martial arts, you don't always reveal all of your training methods and special skills to beginners outright. And sometimes it's also not the right time to tell them about everything, right? Because someone is an absolute beginner, they just need to be able to hold and move their body correctly before they do more sophisticated things. But there comes a point after a few weeks or a few months that you have to start bringing them into the fold and speaking the full truth to them, else they are going to waste their time. And it has to do with morality and virtue and decency, things that are unfortunately lacking in many martial arts schools and amongst many teachers. And I am very fortunate to be among a broad group of colleagues and friends who teach the martial arts in this very moral, virtuous, and respectful type of way, who do not act like in that manner. And you would soon be listening to quite a lot of these fascinating characters on our JadeCast podcast. So I hope you have enjoyed today's lecture and that it was of interest to you. And like I said, I was very broadly speaking and generalizing today, but in later lectures, I would get into the specifics about so-called secrets, training methods, methods of applying the arts that are not commonly taught, and talk about how these things are done. So that it would be to your own benefit potentially if you could take what I explain and apply it to your specific martial art and practice. Anyway, have a most wonderful day, and please share this podcast with fellow students and teachers, family, friends, acquaintances, whomever you see fit. And if you really have a genuine great deal of interest in martial arts, and especially the traditional martial arts, do look for my books that have been written, and took me quite a lot of time, years to write some of these, about the traditional martial arts. And you could find my books on any Amazon website. You can, by writing my name, you can write Jonathan Bluestein on Amazon. You can write the names of some of my books. For example, you could search for Research of Martial Arts, or The Martial Arts Teacher. And I have many more books coming in 2020, 2021, 2022. I guarantee you it's gonna get very interesting with the choice of topics I have for these books of mine. You can also visit the website of my international organization, Blue Jade Martial Arts International. The address is bluejadesociety.com. bluejadesociety.com. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you next time.